Dear passengers, this is your captain speaking. Let's talk about a very rare accident that happened in aviation. I am Palfarmer and I've been a pilot for 34 years. One of the scariest things that can happen to a pilot is the event of an explosive decompression during flight. A decompression like this can be caused by a door blowing out, a bomb, or as illustrated in the following case. An abrupt decompression happened to Captain Timothy Lancaster while flying his Buck 111 from Birmingham in the UK to Malaga in Spain. Without warning, with a thunderous bang, the window in front of him exploded out of the flight deck and the captain got sucked out after it. If it weren't for his knees getting stuck behind the control column, he would have been sucked out entirely, and that would have been the end of him. He hung out of the window with his upper body in the freezing cold air with very little oxygen and blowing by with a force bigger than the heaviest hurricane. A cabin crew member who had just entered the flight deck grabbed the captain by his uniform belt and held on to him. That morning, Captain Lancaster had reported on duty for what looked like just another ordinary day of flying. But little did he know that the jet he was to take from the flight line had come out of the maintenance hangar, where on the captain's side of the flight deck a new windshield had been installed. However, the maintenance crew had used the wrong kind of screws. The screws they used were just a little bit smaller than the ones prescribed by the manufacturer. This, later on, when the airplane was climbing to 17,000 feet, allowed the window to blow out when the air pressure in the airplane was increasing, compared to decreasing pressure from the thin outside air. The reason why we can breathe normal air during flight is that the airplane's engine pumps air into the pressure cabin. This air is taken from the engines and routed through air conditioning units that regulate the temperature. The air in the cabin is not exactly as thick as the air we breathe on the ground. It is as if you breathe air at an altitude of about 6,000 feet or about 2 kilometers. This allows us to cruise at altitudes of up to 40,000 feet or 13 kilometers. That's why if you drink alcohol during a flight, its impact is double that of consuming it in normal sea level air. The reason why pilots are so scared of what in our jargon is called a rapid decompression is that if it happens at a high altitude, you may not have enough time to get your oxygen mask on to save yourself. An explosive decompression comes with a loud bang, fog in the cockpit from the condensation of moisture, dust, flying debris, and in this incredibly rare case, a captain hanging out of the window. The moment that this explosive decompression happens, every human experiences something we call startle factor. For a brief period of time, we are stunned, we are shocked, we are startled. Remember the movie about Captain Sully who landed in the Hudson after flying through a flock of geese? The investigators reenacted his flight in a simulator and, after the engines failed, turned back to the airport and landed safely as a big glider. Why Sully didn't do this, they asked him. Because of startle factor.
No one warned us. No one said you were going to lose both engines at a lower altitude than any jet in history. But be cool, just make a left turn for LaGuardia like you're going back to pick up the milk.
When a stunning and unexpected event like this happens, you need a few moments to come to grips with a new situation and develop a plan. In these costly seconds, when the pilots try to grapple with the crisis, the window of making it back to the airport closed for Sully and his co-pilot. The pilots who ran the tests in the simulator to reenact this event knew what was coming. They didn't experience startle factor. When cruising at high altitudes and experiencing explosive decompression, many things happen simultaneously. This has a startling and disorienting effect. At the same time, the oxygen-rich air inside the pressure hull depletes in a split second, and you will have trouble breathing. There is such a thing as a time of useful consciousness. And this time gets shorter the higher we fly. Captain Lancaster was at 17,000 feet, breathing air that still contained a bit of oxygen. At that altitude, you have about 20 to 30 minutes of useful consciousness. In less time than this, the airplane rapidly descended to a lower altitude. At 35,000 feet, a normal cruising altitude for commercial airplanes, there is barely any oxygen, and people will die of oxygen starvation. The time of useful consciousness is 30 to 60 seconds at altitudes like this. This time coincides with your time of being startled. That is why it is so scary to a pilot, because you don't know how your body will react. You may get hit in the head with flying debris that gets sucked out of a broken window. Your time to come to grips with the situation may exceed the time you are still conscious. and have the common sense to put on your oxygen mask. During their entire career, pilots are trained repeatedly in the simulator to handle rapid decompression. And because the airline training programs are what they are, pilots usually know that during a training session they may get a practice decompression. Usually this is simulated by a huge bang, a roaring sound, red warning lights going off in front of you, the displays with the cabin altitude and differential pressure turn amber and red, and in that split second you do what you're trained for. You grab the oxygen mask out of its holder, pull it over your head, make sure the oxygen flows, and then you try to communicate with the other pilot via the intercom mic that is built into the mask. The next action is to rapidly descend to a lower altitude where the air contains more oxygen. Usually we set 10,000 feet unless there is high mountainous terrain below us. Next, you issue a mayday call and inform air traffic control. You navigate out of the airway because there may be airplanes flying below you. The last thing you want is to collide with oncoming traffic while trying to save you and your passengers and crew. When that is done, and there is time, we refer to a checklist and ensure we don't miss any other important things. According to the incident report of Captain Lancaster's flight, his first officer did exactly what he was trained to do. He brought the flight to a good ending with no loss of life. When I travel as a passenger on a commercial airplane, I always make it a point to pay attention to the instruction of the cabin crew. Very few passengers do. They seem to think, yeah, seen this a million times, not important. But it is important, and it may be a lifesaver to know where those oxygen masks are, where the emergency exits are located, and what the floor lights look like that guide you to these exits. I also pay attention out of respect to the cabin crew. These are trained professionals, first and foremost trained to guard your safety. That later on they serve drinks may be nice, but in an explosive decompression, it may be this crew that saves you and saves the day. On that note, this was your captain speaking. Subscribe, like, and see you in the next video.